welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this. Okay, before we dive into today's episode, and before I forget, let's just be honest, that's why I'm doing it now. I wanted to let you guys know that I've got a free live training coming up. Mark your calendars, okay? On Tuesday, March 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You guys, it's free. It's open to everyone. I'm wicked excited. Now, I know you've heard me talk about spiritual teams before. You hear me talk about it all the time. I'll be like, oh, my spiritual team said this, my spiritual team said that. I asked my spiritual team for help. And I'm going to be doing a training on building your spiritual team. I'm so excited to share this with you guys. So please help me to spread the word. This is where you need to go to sign up for this sucker, okay? It's Karen Kenney, Kenney, KarenKenney.com/free training. And that will get you signed up for this. And I'm wicked excited and I hope to see you there. Okay, bye. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. And today's little ditty, we're just going to simply call this sucker Plot Twist. Plot twist. Okay, look, if you're human, if you are a human being and you can hear the sound of my voice right now, I think you're going to be able to relate to this one. So you ever just like going about your business in your life? You know, you got a few plans made, you kind of have this vision, or like, you're like, these are the steps. This is what I'm going to do. This is where we're going. You told people this is what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, boom, like life happens, right? Life happens. And we can either get totally like taken out at the knees, knocked on our ass, become paralyzed with like, what the fuck is happening right now, right? Or as we can often do, like as a writer, I think you guys know that of course, I'm a spiritual mentor. I'm a podcast host. I've been a yoga teacher for like 20 years. In fact, you guys, I just had oh my God, I got certified. So I was teaching before I was certified, but I got certified to teach in 2001. Jesus, it's like I'm so old, you guys. So I've been officially a certified teacher for 20 years, but I've been teaching for more than that. It's unbelievable. But I'm also a writer. I am an author. I am a speaker. I am a gateless writing teacher. And so much in writing, right? I write memoir, like I write personal essays, nonfiction, stuff like that. But I know that my friends who are fiction writers, we often joke about this because when you write fiction, your characters kind of take on a life of their own. And so all of a sudden you'll be thinking that your book is going in a particular direction, just how like in life. But then the characters show up and they start telling a different story. And all of a sudden you're like, plot twist, did not know that this was going to happen. And in our own day-to-day lives, we see all kinds of different plot twists, right? I talk about it a lot with the different D's, like, you know, the death, the divorce, the diagnosis, the disappointment, like these things that just pop up that we were not expecting, that kind of come out of the blue. And it's like getting sucker punched or taken out at the knees. And you're just like, shit, man. And I often try to bring a little levity to things. And I'll often say, when these unexpected things happen, we can simply just kind of yell out, plot twist. And it kind of helps us. And now, look, I know really serious and difficult and brutal and traumatic things happen in life. I'm not talking about belittling the things that really deserve our attention and that are going to warrant help, or we're going to experience grief. I'm not saying that. But a lot of times, if we can just come to expect the unexpected. And so I wanted to share with you guys like where this just recently showed up in my own life. in a good way, because it's not just always like, oh, plot twist, something bad is happening. Sometimes it's plot twist, holy shit, this is really fun and exciting, right? So it's not always like a downer or a bummer or something awful that has happened. But I wanted to share with you guys a quote that I have often found incredibly helpful. And I've shared it. I can't even tell you how many times I have shared this quote with my, in the past, with my yoga students, with my mentoring clients, and with my my members who are in the Nest, my membership and community. And it's by Neil Donald Walsh. And if you don't know Neil Donald Walsh, he's written a series of books, Conversations with God. And he says this, and I think it's so powerful. He says, if you want guarantees in life, then you don't want life. You want rehearsals for a script that's already been written. Life by its nature cannot have guarantees, or its whole purpose is thwarted. Oh, you guys, so good. I'm going to read it one more time for those of you who like to take notes or write shit down. If you want guarantees in life, then you don't want life. You want rehearsals for a script that's already been written. Life by its nature cannot have guarantees, or its whole purpose is thwarted. Ooh. And it kind of also reminds me of another quote that used to say, I think it was, I want to say it was Saint Teresa of Avila, maybe, but it was something like, oh no, maybe I have another quote from her that I'll share later, but yeah, maybe it was, I can't remember. But it's basically like, don't try to, I'm going to butcher this. I apologize. I apologize in advance, but it's something like, don't shelter me. Don't shelter me from the difficult things in life. Just give me the strength. Give me the strength to overcome them or to bear up under them. You know what I mean? And this is what I think daily spiritual practices really help us to do. Like, this is the power of connecting more deeply with yourself, your source, and spirit, is that you start to develop the strength and the capacity to deal with whatever life brings to your door. You know how that beautiful poem by the poet Rumi, I know you guys have heard me talk about the mystical poet Rumi before, and he has a beautiful poem called The Guest House, where he talks about how, like, each day, this being human is a guest house. Each day a new arrival. So like each day we wake up and we don't know what's going to come into our world, right? He says, some joy, some sadness, some meanness, right? Like something arises and arrives. And he says, to greet them all at the door laughing. And he says, and invite them in. And he says, even if what's showing up is like a great boatload of sorrows, right? I threw in the word boatload. Sorry, Rumi. He said, even if what shows up is this great sorrow, it could be sweeping your house clear for some great delight. And he says, everything that shows up has been sent as a gift, as a guest from beyond. And I think about this and I think like, yeah, there are so many things in life that like show up unexpectedly. And we're like, why is this happening? And if we can shift, and if you haven't listened to this episode, I'm pretty sure I did an episode called From the Why to the What. And it's like, instead of like this whole, like, why is this happening to me? It's like, what does this have to teach me? What is the lesson here or the blessing here? What is this trying to teach me? And that's one of the great gifts of like plot twists. It's like sometimes we get a delight. Sometimes something shows up and it's painful, but it's an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for compassion, an opportunity for forgiveness. And it's not like that's always like happens overnight, right? Like it's a process sometimes. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about this, how, sometimes things happen in our lives and we're just kind of looking around like, what the fuck? Like this came out of nowhere. And this is when having deep spiritual roots, deep spiritual connections can help to stabilize us. My meditation teacher, Ishwaran, Eknath Ishwaran, he used to say how his granny was his spiritual teacher. And I'm doing, if you can't see me right now, because you're listening and not watching, I'm kind of like pulsating my hands, like up and down, like the scales of balance, the scales of justice, right? Up and down. And his granny used to always say to him, life will always go up and down, but you do not have to go up and down with it. And this is the power of having the support of something that you believe in, some sort of faith, some sort of spiritual tradition or spiritual practice, and also having a belief in, I call it Holy Spirit, in a teacher. Some of you might call it your highest self or your intuition, whatever you call it. It's that inner knowing, that inner voice that speaks for the divine. And it's also wicked helpful to have a spiritual team. And if you guys, speaking of spiritual teams, if you hear me talk about spiritual teams all the time, but if you listen to the intro at the beginning of this, you heard me talk about, I just want to remind you one more time, that I have a free live training coming up on Tuesday, March 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to talk all about building your spiritual team and how to utilize and use and work with your spiritual team. And I'm wicked excited. So one of the great gifts of having a spiritual team is that you never have to feel alone on this journey. So when a big plot twist happens, right, you have the support. You know that you can rely on something greater than yourself, something that is infinitely more divinely intelligent than you. And thank Christ for that, right? I always just think like, oh my God, like if I was left to my own devices all the time, if I had to drive the bus right over the cliff, you guys, right? Thank God. And my spiritual team is so generous and they're multifaceted and they're like, I'm a spiritual mutt. So I have a very eclectic spiritual team. Some of my members, you can see back there, and they're all around me, all over the place in my house. Because KK needs a lot of help. Like KK is a little, you can see I'm recording this on St. Patty's Day. And I got my townies hat on. You can see it. My little shamrock. So you just know that this Irish kid's a little thick-headed. Amen. Hallelujah. Double amen hands. So here's the thing about having spiritual help and spiritual practices is that when these unexpected things come up, if we've had some skin in the game, if we spent some time, right? And whether you're kneeling on all your knees praying, right? All you Catholic kids out there, or whether you're sitting on your meditation cushion, or you're sitting there in your journaling, however it is, you're repeating your mantra, however it is that you connect to source, you connect to God, you connect to the love that is. It's really helpful to know that we have these practices that give us these internal stabilizers so that we know that we can face whatever is happening. And I'm going to share with you guys another little piece of inspiration. I always hope on the podcast that I'm giving you guys, I'm sharing something that is helpful, right? That either helps you to think differently or feel differently, or introduces the possibility to feel different. And that's what so much of my work is about, right? It's so interesting. Like I don't sell products, right? I am a quote unquote service-based provider. I am a service provider. And so often in marketing and stuff, and everybody's like, so like, what's your marketing, your profitable marketing message? Like, what's your result process? Like, what's the thing you're going to promise them? How are you going to take them from where they are to where they want to be? Like, what's their pain points? And I'm like, look, here's the deal. All I know is that I think that I help people to understand that there is a possibility to feel different, that there is another way, that they could choose peace instead of this, and that peace and happiness is their birthright. I could talk about this all day long from 1,000 different angles. But I think when we have hope, that we do not lose sight of that spark of divinity, when we don't lose sight of the light, even if sometimes it's a pinhole of light, that we know that there is a possibility that we could feel differently, that we could experience ourselves in the world differently, that we could actually heal from our trauma, that we have the inner resources that we need to overcome whatever is showing up. Plot twist, because sometimes your life is like plot twist, plot twist, plot twist, right? It's like a hat trick of plot twists. It's not always just like, oh, life just waits until you're ready and prepared for the next fucking surprise. Not how it works. And if we don't have any spiritual foundations in place, if we don't have a community, right? Because it's not just like with spiritual teams, it's like often can seem a little bit ethereal or external or out there, right? And sometimes we just want to be like grounded, like, are there people who give a shit about me? Like, am I felt? Am I seen? Am I heard? Am I understood? Do I matter? Do I even matter? And that's one of the most powerful things about having spiritual community, which is also what we have in the nest, which is all wicked exciting. But here's a quote that I wanted to share with, and we're back. I got a little excited there. So here's a quote that I wanted to share with you from Saint Teresa of Avila, who I mentioned earlier. She says, to have courage for whatever comes in life, everything lies in that. To have courage for whatever comes in life, everything lies in that. And it can be really hard to have courage if you don't have any spiritual tools in place to help you to even know that there is something beyond your suffering, that there is something that is actually greater than your suffering. We believe so much in the power of the things of this very earthly realm world that we sometimes lose sight of miracles, right? We sometimes lose sight of the power to shift our perspective, to shift our perception from a place of ego conditioning fear to the possibility that there is a better way, a different way, right? That is love, that there is healing that is possible, that we're not having to do this all on our own. So, the courage for whatever comes in life is a little bit easier to have more confidence in courage when you have some practices, some tools, and a community that surrounds you and supports you. Amen to that. But here's a Schwaren's commentary on that quote. And I just love this so much, you guys. And it speaks so much to what Neil Donald Walsh was telling us in his quote too. Like when a plot twist happens, right? So listen to this. He says, for the majority of us, uncertainty is worse than disaster because disaster comes to us only rarely, but worrying depletes us often. He says, we never know whether we're going to get a brick or a bouquet. We never know whether we're going to get a brick or a bouquet. If we knew for certain that a brick was on its way, there would be no anxiety. We would just say, okay, throw it and be done with it. And he says, we can learn how to handle both bricks and bouquets, both praise and censure, success and defeat. When we can say, whatever comes, we will not be afraid because the divine self is within us. When we can say, whatever comes, we will not be afraid because the divine self is within us. Then this resoluteness and faith will enable us to work free from tension, agitation, and fear of defeat. Yes. He goes on to say, final thing, the person who works in this way is at peace because he or she is not anxious about the results. You guys, this is so good, right? This thing where he's saying, you can learn how to handle no matter what comes, whether somebody's building you up or tearing you down, whether you have a bunch of success or you have a moment of defeat, whether you get the brick, this always cracks me up, whether you get the brick or the bouquet. Whatever comes, we won't be afraid because the divine self is within us. And so much of my work is about this. It's about reminding you. It's about the remembering of this truth that the divine self is within you. And I believe this. I believe this to the deepest core and marrow of my being. I was talking with my writing friend and coach, Sarah, earlier today, and she's, kind of walking along beside me on this journey of my memoir. And one of the things she was saying about me is that she said, I think one of your superpowers, Karen, is that you're able to hold on to that divine, that image of the divine spark of light. You can see that divine, as small as it might be, that divine spark of light in everyone. And it just made me really smile, and it made me happy. And it's true. And that's also something that, A Course in Miracles has taught me so much about, especially in the forgiveness process, And it's what helped me to be able to go through the process of, you guys have heard me talk about this before, forgiving the guy that killed my mother, is that I'm able to kind of hold on to that divine spark in others. But I've also learned how to acknowledge and see the divine spark within myself. And because I know that the strength of God is within me, that I don't just have to rely on my own strength, that I also have a spiritual team that has my back, that supports me and guides me, that I have an internal teacher and a teacher, Spirit, Holy Spirit, who also has my back and fucking helps me get out of my own way. Because of this, I can move through the world without having to worry so much about plot twists, right? So a plot twist happens and I don't have to become paralyzed. I don't have to become completely freaked out. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not a robot. I'm a human being. It doesn't mean when something unexpected happens, when I get news that somebody that I cared about or loved or knows died, or when I find out that something isn't gonna, go the way that it's planned. It's not that I don't have feelings, or I don't cry or have a moment where I'm bummed or whatever. Again, I'm not a robot, but I can rebound very quickly, right? And I can allow myself also, if I need more time, I don't shame myself anymore for my tears. I don't apologize for crying. I don't feel like it makes me weak, right, to ask for help in processing something. And that's a huge thing for like a kid like me. Like, this whole podcast isn't all about me, but it's the lens that I can teach through and speak through, right? So it was a huge journey for me to be able to not get taken out at the knees by things, because when you've had a lot of plot twists, which often can equate, not always, remember, we're going to talk about how it can be positive too in a minute, but a lot of times plot twist is equal to trauma, right? Like somebody you love dies, or somebody you love leaves, or somebody betrays you, or somebody betrays your friendship, or a friendship or a relationship or whatever ends. And there's like this grief that needs to be processed. So this isn't about like being so proud, oh yeah, I'm not affected by the things of this world. It's like, no, of course. I cry every single day. I have a reason to cry every single day. Sometimes happy tears, sometimes sad tears, because I'm really moved. I'm really moved by my brothers and sisters of the world. So, but to know, right, to be able to take some time beyond, let me just say this, beyond the necessities of life, like food, clothing, shelter, like taking care of yourself, your safety, all these things. But beyond that, to me, nothing is more important than this spiritual work, this inner work of knowing your true self, knowing who you are and to whom you belong and where you truly come from, and knowing what you're capable of, not because you're relying on your own strength, but because you're relying on the strength of something greater than you. And I just, and I'm not attached. I'm never attached to what you call it. There's no dogma here, but it's one of the things I love about the nest. Somebody was saying to me the other day is that I can have a spiritual experience and I can talk about these different ways to relate to the divine without feeling like I have to be put into a box of a religion or a particular way of looking at God or whatever. And that's one of the things I love about it, is that like-minded people can kind of come together and have the experience of, working through navigating this very human experience, but by using spiritual tools that have helped me and have helped others. So that's really exciting. But let me tell you about why where the inspiration of this whole thing came from. My own plot twist, which is actually a positive plot twist, because it can be wicked fun sometimes, right? When your own life surprises you. And look, I'm going to hold up my little sign like I always do. Spiritual team on the job, STOTJ, people. My spiritual team does not screw around. And so I'll give you a little backstory of how this applies. So when I first thought about, I've told you guys a story of how the idea of a membership came to me, and I was like, oh my God. And I'd always wanted to do one. I shouldn't say always. I'd wanted to do one for several years, but people kept saying to me, oh, they're like people who had been in business longer, wiser, right? Really successful people kept telling me how hard they would be. And I believed them to my own chagrin. I believed them. But then my spiritual team was like, no, we're not doing that. And I'm like, okay, plot twist. So they introduced me to a guy named Stu McLaren, and Stu McLaren is like the membership king. Not only is he the membership king, he's a super duper smarty pants, and he's a sweetheart. He's a hell of a guy. And it was from him that I learned about memberships and how to build a membership and how to run a membership. And I'm in his membership on memberships. So this is how I learned about it. And then, so I created this membership. But when I went through his course and his training and everything, when I came out of it and I was ready to actually do this myself, it was like at the end of spring, like the beginning of summer. So I ended up, creating the nest like June, I think May 31st, like the first week of June, is when I originally opened it up to my founding members. And I got like 42 founding members, and it was amazing. It was so fun, and it was an incredible experience. And I remember at that time thinking like, oh, so if I'm going to be opening up the membership like twice a year, now the timing is going to be a little bit weird. It's going to end up being like June, July, and January. And that's really not what I wanted, but it was kind of like the path that I had set myself on. Because I only wanted to open it twice a year. So it was like 6 months apart, blah, blah, blah. So those of you who've been paying attention, if you're on my email list, or if you're in my world and you listen to the podcast regularly, you might know that I had just opened up the nest in January. And so I was like, oh man, I really want to switch though to like spring and fall. I don't want it to be like winter and summer, right? So I was like, how am I going to do this? And I was like, I don't know. I just opened it in January. I don't plan on opening again until later. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. But here's the great news. I didn't have to know how I was going to do it because something smarter than me was already on the job. And thank you, Jesus, that it was. Hold on, I got to take a sip. So this is what happens, okay? So I'm on a training for something totally different. I'm watching this event. It's an event on virtual events. And while I'm on this event, these people, Barry and Blue, who are like the king and queen of like virtual live events and stuff, they have a couple of speakers come on. One of them you guys have already heard. If you listen to the episode from like 2 weeks ago, John Berghoff, John was one of the speakers at this event, and I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I love him. But one of the other speakers, you guys, who came on, who blew my socks off. I was just literally, as he was still talking, same thing. I was like Googling him, trying to find him online, sending him messages like, dude, we got to connect. Number one, he was a kid from Boston. Number two, talk about a story of adversity. His name is Andre Norman. Here, I'm going to hold up his book so you guys can see him. So this is my new friend, Andre Norman, and this book is called Ambassador of Hope: Turning Poverty in Prison into a Purpose-Driven Life. And when I heard Andre speaking, I was like, oh my God, this is one of my people. I have got to meet him. And so I reached out to him and I asked him if he would, come on to my podcast. And he said yes. And then while he was, this is the plot twist piece. I'm going to get there. You guys know me. I might take a little while, but I'm going to pull the bus into the station. So, when we were on the podcast, recording the podcast, we started talking about memberships and different stuff. Now, Andre travels all over the world. He's a highly accomplished speaker. And again, like I said, his story of adversity, I don't even want to tell you too much. I want you to have to wait, because I'm kind of a jerk like that, but I want you to have to wait to hear his story from his own mouth. And he's going to be my guest on next week's podcast. And you're going to get to see how what I'm talking about right here, this plot twist, how it actually all went down. So when he came on to the show, he started asking me about my membership, and he started asking me about my vision, and he started asking me about my members. And out of the blue, he just totally surprised me. And I can't tell you more than that. You have got to go listen to this episode next week. But because of what happened on that podcast, my whole business, it was all of a sudden like plot twist. And I saw what my spiritual team was up to. And because of Andre, and because of that conversation, and because I was on, like, I didn't even want to do a virtual event. I was on that program out of total curiosity. And it led me to 2 new connections, 2 new relationships, 2 new amazing guests, and people who are doing work in the world that I fucking love and I celebrate and I want to shout out about. And then Andre just totally surprises me on that podcast which basically sets in motion a series of steps where I'm like, holy shit, now I've got to open up the nest in April. And what was my plan? Remember, all along, that's right. That was originally what my heart wanted, what my spirit was directing me to do, what my inner teacher was kind of knocking on the door. And I was kind of pumping the brakes because I was like, oh no, because I already had this plan. And my spiritual team is like, plot twist, motherfucker, right? It's like so funny. So you guys, you got to come check it out. You've got to come listen to this thing. And here's the most amazing thing. I can't even tell you. You got to go. All right. In case you don't go listen to it, here's all I'm going to say. Andre is going to be my guest teacher in the nest in April. And he usually charges people like he's like $10,000 an hour. He is an incredibly life-changing speaker. He helps people get the fuck out of their own way to rewrite. Like he is an incredible being. And I am so on, like, you just gotta go listen to the episode to see what I'm talking about that plot twist. So keep in mind, not all plot twists are negative. Sometimes it just surprises us and we're like, oh my God, is this really happening? And I've seen it 1,000 times in my life. You know, when people always say to me, like, why do you have such unwavering faith? Like, why do you whatever? Like, all these terrible things have happened to you in your life. And like, why do you always think that shit is like happening for you, like on your side? And I'm like, I've just had too much proof, man. I have just had too much proof that I am loved, that I am one of God's kids, that even when I don't like something or understand something, with enough time and enough, what's the word I'm looking for? Perspective, and over, like being able to kind of look at it through a new lens or from a new point of view, eventually all roads lead to like, oh yeah, this was something for me. When I got out of the why, like, why is this happening? And I understood the what. And I think it happens in both ways. So right now you could probably have a list. Like if I just said plot twist, you could look back at your life and be like, holy shit, I did not see that coming. I did not expect that. And it can be anything from, I did not expect to get pregnant. I did not expect to fall in love. I did not expect to move to California. I cannot tell you how many plot twists I have had in my life. And I look back now and I just think like, man, something greater than me. And it's why my path has never been a straight and narrow path in terms of, for lack of a better word, my career or my journey. It has always been like a zigzag path. I always call it like the zigzag path of like, wait, what? We're going where? Like, what's happening? Because something greater than me is in charge. And my job is to just do the work, to have the courage for that when, like as Saint Teresa says, have the courage for whatever comes in life. Everything lies in that. And where do we find the courage? Where do we find the confidence? Where do we find the balls, the chutzpah, the strength, the whatever you want to, the tenacity, the resiliency, the grit, the hardiness, right? We find it by having a deep spiritual foundation, a solid foundation upon which we can stand and move from, when we know that we have the inner resources to handle whatever life, whatever plot twist gets thrown our way. Because it's just as easy. I've seen people who have gotten unexpected fame, and in some ways it's taken them out at the knees. I've seen people get unexpected fortune and it's paralyzed them and it wrecked them, right? If we are not internally prepared for the external events of this world, if we don't have, again, like I said, internal stability and then an external community or spiritual fellowship, it can be so much harder to navigate this human experience. If we are not recognizing that divine spark that lives within us and each other, oh my God, this is how we end up where we are, because we are a culture that is more interested in our differences, right? The color of our skin, our genders, our sexuality, our preferences, our incomes, all the bullshit that the ego would love to have you believe. I'm not saying that there aren't actually physical or visual differences, but the one thing that unites us all, and this is what all the spiritual traditions say, they say oneness, unity, is that there is a divine spark that lives within each of us. And I just can't be talked out of that belief. I just know it, right? I just know it in my bones. And so you guys, I hope today was helpful in some way. I hope you're excited for next week's episode. I hope you're going to join us. Oh, please do come. Just go to KarenKenney.com/free training. Sign up for the free training on spiritual teams, building your spiritual teams. Won't it be nice? Won't it just be nice to know that you don't have to do all of this alone? You know what I'm talking about? Isn't it going to be nice to know that you've got some divine helpers at your back and on your side and walking along beside you, right? And that's one of the great quotes from A Course in Miracles. It says, if you knew who walks beside you on this way that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. So you guys, I'm inviting you to a couple of cool and fun things. So I hope you take me up on it. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any of this stuff, if you're not already on my email list, you guys, just go and do it. Just sign up. It's KarenKenney.com/sign up. And I know I'm breaking all the quote unquote marketing rules by giving you several calls to action. But first and foremost, sign up for the free training. Watch or listen to the episode that's coming out, episode 108 with Andre Norman. And then get on the email list if you haven't already. And here's another little boop, boop, a little, what do they call it? Housekeeping. So Apple Podcasts, Apple Podcasts no longer say subscribe. It says follow. So if you're listening to this right now and you have not, quote unquote, followed the Karen Kenney Show yet, go ahead and do that. It would be wicked fun. And I'd appreciate it. So you guys, I love you so much. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Remember, if you want guarantees in your life, you don't want life, right? You want a script that's already been written. And that by its very nature kind of defeats the whole purpose. It thwarts the whole purpose of life, as Neil Donald Walsh tells us. And so if you got some plot twists going on, whether you have kind of looked at them as negative or positive or whatever, like remember what Ashwaran's granny says, right? Life is going to go up and down, but you don't have to go up and down with it. It doesn't mean that we won't trip, we won't stumble, we won't have a moment of shock or like whatever till we get our bearings. But one of the things that great spiritual practice and great spiritual work does, and this is why I love doing the work that I do, is that it gives you like really good, strong spiritual, what I call longitude and latitude, your internal compass of being able to find your way back to love, of being able to find your way back home to the truth, to the divine spark, to the divine itself, your source, is so powerful that no matter what kind of plot twist comes your way, you'll be able to navigate it with more grace and more courage and more compassion, and sometimes especially with a sense of humor. So you guys, I love you. I celebrate you. I appreciate you. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Wherever you go, please be mindful, be aware of your energy and your presence and how you just being there can make a difference. Wherever you go, may you leave the people, the place, the animals, the environment better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days, and let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KenneYlive. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie. and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.